In this tutorial, I want to show you guys how to retouch your studio portraits and how to clean up the background of your studio images, and also how to process your raw files for those that shoot in studio or those who are afraid to shoot raw in studio because you are afraid of how you're going to color grade that image later on or process that raw file to get back those nice and vibrant colors. So this tutorial is for you guys. Then we're also going to be doing the skin tone color grading using my skin tone LUTs later on in this tutorial, and later on save this image so that we can have a nice and sharp image after doing the skin retouching. So I want to show you guys all that in this tutorial. So let's just kick in and we start working on this studio portrait by a friend of mine. She's called Jasmine. So the very first thing I do when it comes to studio portraits is coming to the highlights and just knocking them all the way down. So that brings back most of the information that was overexposed. And by the way, this was taken using a 2 light setup. So I had one light this side and the main light right in front here. So after doing all that, I come to my blacks and I push them down to have back the contrast. Then I add some little bit of contrast to around 6 to the image. And after doing that, I come to the tint option, and since I shoot with Canon, it usually adds some kind of magentas to the images. I'm just going to come to the tint and I'm just going to reduce on the amount of magenta. So the opposite of magenta is green. So I'm just going to push this towards the greens just like that to get back a more nice skin tone. And you can see where we started and where we are right now. The image is now coming back to life. Then I'm going to push up my shadows just like that, and you can see that now the image is getting to look better. So I'm just going to stop at 48, then knock down my whites a little bit. So I think that is all. So I could come and add some little bit of clarity to the image to around 3. Then what I want to do, I'm just going to do the eye and teeth whitening before we can cross over to Photoshop to do the skin retouching and cleaning up of the background for this very image. Just going to come to the eyes and zoom in, come to the adjustment brush tool. So how this tool works is you have to set it to eliminate particular colors in the white area of the eye. So for this case, what we have some colors. For example, we have some yellows in the white area of the eye, and we have some kind of greens in the white area. So we want to set up this brush so that it is going to be able to eliminate those colors from the white area of the eye, hence whitening it. So the opposite of yellow is blue, so we're just going to move this towards the opposite, which is -22. Then the opposite of green, in order to eliminate the greens in the white area of the eye, is the magenta. So I think at around 62 is fine. Then we want this eye to pop, so we're just going to push up the highlights rather to 5, and also do the same for the whites. Then the next thing we want to do is desaturating those other random colors that don't belong to yellows and greens. So we're just going to come to the saturation and knock it down to around -64 and simply start painting. So you left click and start painting over in the white area to eliminate those colors, and you can see that it's doing a pretty nice job trying to whiten the eye. So when it comes to this beautiful catch light in the eye area, you can come and paint over it if at all you want to enhance it, but for this case I'm just going to leave it the way it is, and hold down the space bar key to bring up this hand and move to a second eye and paint over the white area. I'm basically painting over the white area because if I paint over the skin, it is going to desaturate or remove color, since the saturation of the brush or the settings of the saturation are put all the way down. Then I'm just going to hold down the space bar key, left click and move to the teeth and just paint over the teeth just like that. So you have to be careful not paint over the lips. So I think that looks fine. So after you have done all your eye and teeth whitening, the next step is going to be doing the skin retouching on this image. So In order to do a skin retouching, you're simply going to come right to the open option or this open section and simply open the image into Photoshop. So just going to hit Command minus to zoom out, just like that, so that we can see what we have done for the eye and teeth whitening. So I feel like the image is a little bit underexposed. I'm just going to come back to a basic panel and simply pump up the exposure a little bit more to around 1. So open the image into Photoshop to do the skin retouching and color grading. I don't know, my desktop looks like this. I haven't taken time to arrange it. So here we are in Photoshop. So the very first thing I'm going to do is doing the skin retouching, and for skin retouching I'm going to be playing my retouching essentials pack. So the action for the frequency separation, because I don't want to go all over through everything I do when I'm creating all those layers. And for those interested in my retouching essentials pack, it's going to be linked in the description of this video, so that you can visit my digital store and purchase that at a discount. So I'm just going to come under my actions and I'm going to come to my retouching essentials and select a 16-bit action. So you can see at the bit depth of this image is 16. So I'm just going to come and play my 16-bit. So it has played. So what you have to do for this case, you have to zoom in and look for that area that has more or prominent textures than the rest of the skin, so which is this case, and simply move the radius up to the point when you are losing out on that detail in that area that we have selected. So I think at 5 we have lost out on the details in the skin area of the model. Then after doing that, we're just going to come and hit OK, and after doing all that, it's going to play and create for us all those folders automatically. So the importance of these actions is to speed up the retouching process in Photoshop. And after it has done that, it has automatically created for us a black and white layer. So this black and white layer basically helps us to see where the skin tones are uneven, and we tend or we try to even them out using the mixer brush tool, or for whichever tool we prefer to use for frequency separation. So for this case, I'm just going to come and get the mixer brush tool. So right click under the brushes and get the mixer brush tool. You have to make sure it is a soft one, hardness at 0. Then make sure it is a clean brush. So we have two options right here: load the brush after each and every stroke, and clean the brush after each and every stroke. So we have to select the second option because we don't want to drag skin tones or color from one area to another. Wetness is going to be 9 because we don't want to spill color as we're trying to blend it. That's why we need a low wetness. For this case, I'm going to be using 9 because it is my favorite. Load is 75, mix 90, and the flow 100. Make sure sample all layers is not checked or marked because we only want to deal with the low frequency layer, which contains the colors or skin tones. And after doing that, you can now use Ctrl plus or Command plus to zoom in and hold down the space bar and left click to move and start evening out. So how we even out the skin tones, we make sure we blend the midtones alone, the highlights alone, and the shadows alone. So for this case, we're just going to come and start left click and start painting. So I'm basically using the mixer brush tool to even out the tones. And the way I'm doing this, I'm left clicking and holding down and blending the midtones alone, the highlights, and the shadows alone. So you can see I'm not dragging tones from one area to another, and I'm blending the way an area is shaped so that I don't distort the original shape of the area I'm trying to even out the skin tones at. So that is what I am trying to do in this particular image. So you can as well work without the use of a black and white layer if at all it is a little bit distracting. So you can simply turn it off. That is the advantage of these actions, and come and start or continue evening out the tones just like that. So I'm blending the midtones alone, the highlights and the shadows alone in this image just like that. I hope you can see and love this. So we're just going to increase on the size and blend this other area. So what we are doing, we are just basically trying to even out the skin tones using the mixer brush tool. And remember, skin retouching is more of evening out the skin tones in the images so that we can have nice and smooth skin tone transitions. So after doing that, we're just going to come to the face area. So for this case, it is okay to zoom all the way in. And if at all you wish, you can turn on the black and white layer, because in this case, you're going to be able to see every uneven skin tone and blend it well into the image. So just going to reduce on the size and blend these shadows alone, just like that. And you can see the way the cheekbone is shaped in such a format. So left click and start painting. So left click and hold down and paint over to create even transitions within the skin tones in those particular areas. And as you're doing this, make sure you are selected on the low frequency layer, which contains the colors and the skin tones of your images. So just come to this highlight and just blend it alone. And where this is transitioning, just come and blend that area so that you can harmonize or have a nice and smooth transition within the skin tone. You can start to have midtones right here. I'm just blending them alone, and I have a highlight. I'm just going to blend that highlight just like that, and coming to the nose area and continue doing the same. So I'm basically using the mixer brush tool to even out the skin tone. So you can turn off the black and white layer if at all you are no longer seeing every skin tone well, and come and also blend or smooth out the neck area just like that. So you can see that this is really a powerful tool. When we zoom out, you can see if at all we turn off the group before and after, it is not too much, and we have the original shape of the model's face or skin. So what we want to do is getting another tool that is going to perfect the areas we may have missed out when you are trying to blend or even out the skin tones, especially in the face area, and that is the lasso tool. So when you select the lasso tool, make sure that the low frequency layer is selected and your feathering is 22 pixels, because we want fine selections when you are trying to select the skin we want to smoothen out. And now come and make a selection in like that. So you left click and hold down and make a selection, come to filter, blur, and come to Gaussian blur. So we have to move this up to a point when we have a nice transition within the skin tone, just like that. So for this case, I'm just going to leave it at around 15 and come and hit OK, and just come and continue selecting, right clicking and applying the Gaussian blur. And when you feel like it is too much for your liking, you can simply fade or reduce on the effect or the intensity. So if at all I apply it right there and it is too much, I could come right click and come to fade, Gaussian blur, and reduce on the effect. So I'm just going to leave everything at 100% so that you guys can see the effect quite well. I think that is all for the face area. So I think we're done doing the blending or evening out of the skin tones in the face area. So the next thing we want to do is removing the blemishes from the image. So come to the high frequency layer and come and get the clone stamp tool and zoom all the way in, because we are dealing with tiny parts or skin imperfections in this image. So how this works, you have to make sure the opacity and the flow is at 100 and current layer is selected, because we are dealing with only the textures that are embedded in the high frequency layer. So hold down the alternate and left click to sample and release both the alternate and left click, and simply left click over the blemish to get rid of it. So that is how the clone stamp tool works, and this really produces the best results to your images as you're trying to remove those imperfections or blemishes from your images. So let's just do that quick, because we don't want this to be a long tutorial. And yeah, the blemishes are very few, so we are not going to take more than a minute trying to remove these skin imperfections or blemishes from these areas. So I think we are almost done with the blemish removal. So you always have to take your time while cleaning up or removing blemishes from your images, because you don't want to be regarded too as careless retouchers by people looking at the images. So let's just clean up, and I think we are done removing these blemishes. So the next thing we want to do is coming to the black and white layer and deleting it, so that we can see the before and after for the skin retouching. So this is the image before and after, before, after. So the next thing is we want to create a stamp visible layer to clean up the background of this image. So in order to do that, we're going to hit Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, or Shift Alternate Control E for PC to create a stamp visible layer. And you're just going to come and get this spot healing brush tool and reduce on the size to eliminate this kind of thread right here, and that is gotten rid of. So you could come and reduce on the size and simply paint over this line to get rid of that, and this other line right here. So we are basically trying to first of all remove the prominent lines from this very image using the spot healing brush tool, just like that. So don't mind if at all others are remaining, because we're just going to deal with that in a few using the mixer brush tool. So you're just going to come and eliminate the prominent blemishes. So when we are done removing those prominent blemishes, the next thing is going to be having to come and smoothen out the background of this image. So in order to do that, we're going to come back to the original settings for the mixer brush tool, and we're using a wetness of 9 still. Increase on the size, and for these tough lines, we're just going to left click and move this up and down. So you can see that when we move the mixer brush tool up and down, it is first of all eliminating this line, and secondly blending and making sure that we have a nice transition between the original background and the floor or the foreground of the image. So you're just doing that using the mixer brush tool, and you can see that it is really affecting this image in a positive way, and you can see that we have a nice transition already. So we're just going to come and get rid of this other line in the middle, just like that. And it is very nice and fast, because you don't have to go all over selecting the subject and trying to paint over or sample color. So we're just going to do that. So you can see like it is doing a nice and amazing job right here. So just come and even out just like that. So as you're doing this, make sure you don't paint over the shadows, because that is going to create unnatural results from your images. So just make sure you don't paint over the shadows in the image. So I think that has done a pretty nice job. So you can come and clean up the white area. So just want to clean up this dirt right here using the mixer brush tool, just like that, and getting rid of these other tiny lines right there. So we have some dirt right here. Just come and reduce on the size and paint over that dirt, and I guarantee it won't be able to remain, because it is a mixer brush tool and it is a powerful tool. So let's see the before and after for cleaning up of the background and the foreground of this very image. You can see what we have done, the before, after, before, after. So the next thing, we just want to crop this image. So we're just going to come right here, and we're just going to crop it to look even better, so I'm just going to leave it in the original ratio, and I'm just going to move this in just like that. And I think this looks fine and beautiful. Hit enter, and after doing all that, it is just going to crop the image. And after it has cropped it, the next thing we are going to be doing is going to be the color grading using my skin tone LUTs. And in order to do that, you're just going to come to the color lookup and use one of my LUTs from my most recent pack. So come to load 3D LUT, and I'm just going to come to my LUTs from my recent pack. So load 3D LUT and come right here, and it is under documents, and look for my LUTs. So I'm just going to start let me start with 2 and hit open. And you can see that it adds a way different vibe to this image. So you can come and reduce on the opacity if at all you wish to. So this is the before and after, before, after. Then I could come and change it by simply double clicking right there and coming to load 3D LUT and looking for my other LUT. So let me try 5 and see how that affects the image. I think I prefer 5 for this image. So before, after. Let me look at it at 100%. So depending on the look you're trying to go in for, so I'm just going to go with around, so you have to reduce on the opacity if at all you feel like it is too much for your liking. Just going to go with around 48. So this is the before and after. So the next thing we want to do is exporting this image the best way possible so that it doesn't change in color after you have been able to save or export it. So you're just going to come to File and come to Export and come to Export As. So in come to Export As, what we want to do is embedding these colors into the image. So in order to embed those colors, you have to come and select the format, which is JPEG, and make sure that you have a quality of 100%. So make sure you change the resampling to bicubic sharper because you want a sharp image after you have been able to save it. And we have two options down here. We have convert sRGB and embed color profile. So make sure that you check both, because if at all you don't check both, the colors have been able to embed into the image are not going to be saved or embedded into the image, and you're going to be having those issues of color change after you have been able to upload the image maybe on social media or put it on a different device. So come and make sure you check embed color profile. And after doing all that, the next step is going to be exporting. So come and hit export and choose a folder where you want to export this image. So I'm just going to name this maybe Ronix 2021. So select a folder and hit save, and it's going to be saved in that very folder. So basically, this is how to, first of all, color grade or process your raw studio portraits, and also do eye whitening, do a skin retouching, remove blemishes, and also color grade using my skin tone LUTs. Then the next thing is you have to save the image like I've showed you in this very tutorial. I'm Ronnix from ronnixphotography. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in yet more tutorials on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.